For deeper analysis, we're joined in the studio now by IDF Reserve Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, former international spokesperson for the IDF, frequent guest of ours. Thanks for coming back. Jonathan, look, Palestinian issues, there's a lot of deeper analysis, I think, to get into on what's happening on their side. First from Israel's perspective, where does this leave, let's just say, ties with Saudi Arabia, with the wider Middle East at this point?
Yeah, I think the story is good on the strategic level, regional. If we zoom in on local level, then it is definitely not a positive thing. I think it connects really with the regional trend of US not only having a footprint, which it had in the past, but it's lessening, but also communicating very clearly that it is not interested and not looking at the Middle East as an area of influence. And as such, all of the countries and the organizations and the non-state actors in the Middle East, they take notice and start shifting around. So the Iran-Saudi rapprochement, the bringing in from the cold of the Syrian dictator, and now warming up ties with Hamas. Next step, maybe Islamic Jihad will be welcome to official conferences, and then we will have a complete turn of the dynamics and politics of the Middle East. And it's really a staggering change when you think that only 2 and odd years ago the Abraham Accords were signed, and let's say half a year ago we were speaking about expanding peace with other Arab countries, which isn't impossible as we're speaking now, but we definitely see different Arab states taking steps all in the wrong directions.
Yeah, certainly. It seemed like the dawn of a new reality in the Middle East just a couple of years ago. You mentioned all that seems to, at the very least, be up in the air and uncertain at this point. Look, you mentioned the U.S. here drawing in the big geopolitical issues. I think that's where many of our minds go first when we see Iran and the Saudis. We see Hamas going there, wondering where's the U.S. on this? Where is that traditional sort of management of these relations, or at least involvement in that? Are we seeing China fill that gap somewhat more than the U.S. at this point?
Well, they're
showing interest?
Yeah, they're definitely showing interest and paying the diplomatic and financial dues that they have to in order to buy in the Middle Eastern game, and they have been doing so for a while. Now they're starting to cash in, brokering the agreement between Iran and Saudi, which is really important for them, and it's really quite a slap in the face for the US. I think it should be interesting to follow that it's not an irreversible trend, right? Things were in a different trajectory before. Now they seem to be changing a bit. But I think a lot also depends on the direct ties between leaders, the US president and the Israeli prime minister, and the optics of those ties, because they really are what Israel can use in order to project an image. And if our enemies and regional players see that the Israel-US relationship is weakening and that the personal ties between leaders is not as good as it was before, that's something that perhaps will bring more of these types of negative developments in the region for US and Israeli interests.
I think along those lines, we saw Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah come out, pretty chesty after the events last couple of weeks with Hamas firing rockets out of Lebanon. What was seen certainly by Nasrallah as a weak response by Israel right now. I think he termed it, shooting at banana fields. In other words, that their deterrence is up right now. Is this one of the latest, at least, hard reactions or reality checks, I guess, for Israel in terms of that daylight you're mentioning, emboldening the enemies? They're feeling that they have some deterrence. Are we expecting more robust action from these groups like Hamas?
Yeah, I think it's worth to notice that Hassan Nasrallah said those chesty remarks while in the safety of a bunker.
Yes, he's still in a bunker. Yes,
so he's still not chesty enough and brave enough to come out in the open, and that's important context. However, if we look at Israeli responses to Hezbollah aggression since 2018, 2019, and until today, it has been a lot of fire into open fields and perhaps banana plantations, and less actual really making Hezbollah pay a price for firing rockets, for firing anti-tank missiles, and also for sending a terrorist across the border who detonated an IED at the Megiddo junction just about a month ago. So these are things that have gone either unchecked or with very limited responses from the IDF, relative, of course, to the tools at Israeli disposal. And probably that is why Hassan Nasrallah and others are again probing and testing the waters and seeing how much they can get away with and how much audacity they can add to their rhetoric.
But looking at Hamas in particular here, I mean, they're, I know they got some, call it hatchets to bury with the Saudis. I mean, this goes back to Saudi, I think just in 2019, arrested dozens of Hamas members in Saudi Arabia. There's been a lot of issues between these groups. What do you make of this apparent, Hamas diplomatic initiative around the region right now?
I see it more as an indication, a Saudi indication to Israel and to the US that if things don't change, then we have ways of our own to be influential. The Saudis probably are telling themselves, well, we shouldn't leave influence to states like Qatar and others on Hamas. We want to be big and powerful. And if the US is zooming out and Israel appears to be in somewhat of a security or political disarray, then maybe now is the time to step in and again to elevate the standing of the Saudis and have more influence on what's happening. All in all, I think it's a development that we rather wouldn't see. But then on the other hand, there's also good things to be seen from it, because if the Saudis are going to take a place that the Qataris took for many years, then that might be some positive ways to leverage that in the future as well.
I see the Saudis trying to at least reassert themselves if they ever really went anywhere as a regional superpower, or at least pulling the strings of all these issues. Jonathan Conricus, a lot to digest, a lot to keep our eye on here. So thanks for being with us again as today,
as always,
senior Hamas delegation there in Saudi Arabia. Thanks for being with us. We do.